Cartoon creepypastas are dumb, but I kinda love them. For all the 10-year-olds in the audience who have never heard of a creepypasta before, well, they're horror stories that have been shared over the internet, which is unsurprisingly where the name came from, with them basically being creepy copypastas. These stories, after being shared all over the internet, became extremely popular, with some of the more prominent ones being Jeff the Killer, Smile Dog, Laughing Jack, and arguably the most profitable creepypasta, Slenderman, which got quite a few popular games, one of which was all over YouTube for a while. Whoa! What the hell is this? Merchandise, and an awful movie that came out way too late to be successful. There are even websites dedicated to these stories. There's no denying how much of an impact they've had on internet culture. These stories became so mainstream, but almost to its own fault. So naturally every Tom, Dick and Harry thought, you mean all I gotta do is make a shitty face in Photoshop and string it alongside some bullcrap story I wrote during lunch break and I'll become famous? Sign me up. But because coming up with your own character and setting is too hard, I guess, a ton of these creepypastas were about popular video game and TV show characters, like Bart Simpson, SpongeBob, Sonic the Hedgehog, Tails the Fox, Sally Acorn, Knuckles the Echidna, Shadow the Hedgehog, Amy... Wow, there are a lot of Sonic ones. With things like the prevalence of .exes and lost episodes, they kinda turned the concept of creepypastas into a joke.
I bet the only reason they found you in the bed is that you never had a bitch to blow your clarinet. You can't come back because you're already dead, and in the end I'll leave your Easter Island head beheaded.
So we have these scary stories, these blood-curling books, these treacherous tales. Now let's add Squidward tentacles to it. Pretty spooky stuff right there, I know. Yeah, I can't see why people wouldn't take this seriously.
The red mist is coming.
Today I'd like to focus on the ones relating to cartoons, cause I like those, and see if they're all as bad as their titles suggest, or if we can't find a diamond in the rough. Which is gonna be harder than it sounds. Trust me. My first experience with a creepypasta about a cartoon was probably Squidward's suicide, so let's start there. Look at this! How could anyone in any way, shape or form find this scary? Who? Well, I'll tell you who. Me. I was like 10, okay? This image haunted my dreams for many months, but I was so scared of this simple MS Paint edit that I never bothered reading the actual story. Although I did watch the animated version. Huh? Oh, come on, I didn't need to see that. The story of it is something that you're gonna see in a lot of these lost episode creepypastas. You know, it's pretty much, oh, I was working at this animation studio, and I got to see an episode early. It started like normal, but something seemed off. Hyper-realism ensues. So we've got this unpaid intern who gets to see SpongeBob episodes early, you know, like unpaid interns generally do. So they play the episode Fear of a Krabby Patty. But wait! The title card reads, Squidward's Suicide. Whatever, it was probably just a morbid joke. It's a real knee slapper, I know. In this lost episode, Squidward is giving a concert and surprisingly everybody boos. Because that never happens in the show. But this booing is different. This one has some malice sprinkled in. Cut to some hyper-realistic eyes. This confuses the interns.
But since we weren't the writers, we didn't question its appeal to children yet.
Makes sense. Then we go to Squidward sitting on his bed forlornly. But there's no sound. Not even feedback from the speakers. 30 seconds of blinking later, I guess the writer pulled out a stopwatch, we hear some soft sobbing. A full 60 seconds of crying later, we finally get the money shot. Oh wait, there's a few frames of dead children, but I guess we don't need to mention that because spooky eye Squidward. I don't know if 2 mangled corpses was the magic number, but soon our protagonist Stephen Hillenburg enters the scene.
Squidward, don't shoot!
However, it was too late. Poor Squidward shot himself in the head. A few minutes of crime investigation scenes later and nothing happens. Then the author says,
I never believed in unexplainable phenomena before, but now that I have something happen and can't prove anything about it beyond anecdotal evidence, I think twice about things.
Words to live by. This creepypasta was a real crowd pleaser back in the day. Now though, let's just say it's not as respected. Although there are still some people out there who will vouch for the pure geniusness of this story.
The first time I read this creepypasta was years ago when I was honestly still a kid. Being able to come back and have it be just as creepy and well written years later is an honor. 100 out of 100.
But fine, maybe Squidward's suicide isn't the masterpiece it once was. I mean, even Shakespeare has a few blunders. Dead Bart is about The Simpsons though, and as we all know, The Simpsons have always been able to stand the test of time.
You passed the test, genius. Epic sister fail.
Maybe this one about our titular simp boy dying will fare much better. You know how Fox have a weird way of counting Simpsons episodes? Liar! We start off with our lovable protagonist. Listening to David Silverman. A crowd member asks about an episode titled Dead Bart, and Silverman just leaves. Our protagonist, being a real detective, takes this a level higher and tries to ask Matt Groening. After following him for an uncomfortable amount of time, he asks him about the episode, and Matt responds by breaking down into tears. He then gives our main character a link to a virus. Luckily though, this virus had a link to a Simpsons episode on it, so all is forgiven. Poorly animated and poorly stabilized, the first act was fairly normal, although the character seemed a little off. You know, so it wasn't normal. This all changed when our family enters a plane. Bart, staying true to his character, vandalizes a plane window and gets sucked out. Classic Bart. We then get a shot of his hyper-realistic body, which I guess looks something like this. And then Act 2 begins. The family cries. Finally, Act 2 comes to a close. The final act features the Sampsons visiting Bart's body, which was just laying there for someone to bury. Homer, also staying true to his character, cracks a witty joke. Sadly though, it isn't audible. Then some stuff about Michael Jackson at the end. There's some other ones such as Mouse walking for an uncomfortable amount of time, and Ralph fisting a cow, but I think you get the idea. This isn't to say that every creepypasta based on a cartoon is awful. There can be some decent ones like Candle Cove and... I'm sure there are some decent ones. And it's kind of sad. I'm sure there are some great cartoon creepypastas out there, but the genre is just so filled with these shitty...
I found an old VHS tape of Yakety Yak, and his eyes bled at me, and he came out of the TV, and he slit my throat, and he said, God does not exist.
that it becomes hard to take them seriously. Although there are some phenomenal ones like the Lost Word Girl episode, The Last Word.
I was an intern of the show Word Girl for the 3rd season of Word Girl, and it was great until things got in a turn for the worse. The PBS station demanded more animated frames for the show to make the animation flawless.
Gosh darn it, don't you just hate it when those darn stations demand more animated frames? It really didn't help these stories when people started using the characters in things like epic rap battles. You know, it's a little hard to be scarred of this image after saying something like this.
I committed suicide. Do it! Oh, I made a joke that doesn't care about you, bitch. Try have a realist loves fucking lame. Why do we even have to mess around on fucking play?
But there's still one stone left unturned when it comes to these stories. Are they real? It's truly a mystery. Cartoon creepypastas were truly a relic of their time, when people could take what others said at face value, and would believe fantastical tales of cartoon squids shooting themselves. Creepypastas have kind of evolved from people making up lost episodes to actually investigating and finding lost media, such as Blame It On George, who used to partake in the creepiest pastas, but evolved into more nuanced content, like trying to answer the age-old question. Was there really a Mean Girls game for the DS? Nowadays, these stories stand as a testament to how the internet was always searching for mystery, even if they had to make it up themselves. Looking back, try not to see these stories as terrible writers trying cliché concepts in a desperate attempt to gain popularity, but rather as the internet community branching out into a newfound territory of the unknown. Okay, here's my favourite one. Fanboy and Chum Chum, unaired episode. My brother recently committed suicide. It's a banger fucking opening. I was upset, and we were cleaning out his house. That's when I found it. It was labelled in black marker, Kyle the Murderer. Pleasant. The intro began to play. It was normal, except missing a few lines and the quality was horrible. So in other words, it wasn't normal. The title card came up. It said, Killer Kyle is following you. It showed Kyle, in his bed. He was sobbing bloody tears. He got up and opened a door and into a room with guns and knives. He took all the weapons he got and went outside. He saw Fanboy playing alone. Oh, hey Kyle. Enough of your shit. What? Kyle then muttered, die, and lunged at Fanboy with knife, and finally stabbed Fanboy in the eye. What are you? I am not Kyle anymore, so I must be the Antichrist. Kyle had gone mad, you don't fucking say. He thought he was the Antichrist? Was this some kind of episode made by the Illuminati? The what?